Coming up next is our keynote speaker, Shri Shyam Jagannathan, IAS Director General, Directorate General of Shipping, Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, Government of India, who will now speak on shaping a globally competitive and sustainable shipbuilding ecosystem, India's path forward. Inviting him on the dais, give him a huge round of applause, please.
Namaskar. I'm indeed grateful to the Bombay Chambers for this immense opportunity and to my mentor and predecessor in office, Shri Jagannathan sir. Two of the presentations which I heard, riveted and in attention, Manish Sharma ji and Shri Arjun Chogle ji, were very incisive and logical. What I am intending to do is encapsulate the entire journey which the government in the Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways has been attempting to catalyze, wherein shipbuilding is at the very core. As has been said, a leading mother engineering industry which downstream catalyzes multiple avenues for economic activity. It's a slightly longish presentation, but I wouldn't want to impose myself on all of you. I will leave the presentation and the accompanying notes here with the organizers for dissemination. It's all there in the public domain. I'll start with the Indian economic growth story. This has been repeated oft in most of the presentations that India's time has come. The Honorable Prime Minister said, India is in reckoning globally. As a Vishwaguru, we will soon, 27-28, be the fourth largest economy. But while we are addressing this trajectory, there certainly were concerns, and these concerns are emanating from global uncertainties. While shepherding the Indian economy, while working towards social goods, public goods, infrastructure, one criticality that we understood was of ownership and sovereign control of strategic assets. And with that I meant shipping. We are an energy-hungry nation and we are energy insecure as on date. We import a lot of hydrocarbon. What happened recently in the Gulf, in the Middle East, precipitated a complete strategic rethink in the government. And that is where sovereign ownership, as well as facilitating a complete boost to the ecosystem to build, as the Honorable Prime Minister very eloquently put it, Atmanirbhar Bharat. And that is where, at the core, is the genesis of what the government has put forth. This vision has been reiterated. Mr. Chogle has pitched it with a pinch of salt, realism. You cannot be over-ambitious, and the analogy was to a heavy breakfast and a very heavy lunch. We need to right-size it. And I am fully in agreement with what Mr. Chogle has said. If you're looking at where we are, you look at the commercial deliveries and the major shipbuilding nations, and what are we attempting to do in going up either to the third position or the eighth, but trying to attempt to be in the top 5. It is not something that is easier said than done. If you're looking at the shipbuilding tonnage, you're looking at a 10% CAGR in the past 3 years, which needs to be doubled. We need a 20% growth rate to push for the 2047 targets. And similarly, on the repair part, you need to have 4 to 5% CAGR. Meaning, this is the place to which we need to reach what is being done. Now, I will simply present what has been presented as a bouquet of an all-comprehensive fit, and we are customizing it as we speak. This is just the present snapshot of the shipyards, and the very big benefit India has is a very credible defense-built industry. And when I am speaking, I am basically wanting to leverage the strengths and the learnings we've had from our sovereign defense-built capability in shipbuilding, and also projectizing that for our commercial building. This has been spoken about: 4 pillars, 70,000 crores of capital infusion, formal approval of the cabinet. I will come to each of these. The first is the Shipbuilding Finance Assistance Scheme. Before I do elaborate, the mission mode approach and the directions from the foremost office of the Honorable Prime Minister was: the government has to be a catalyst. Every single functionary within the government will ensure interface solely with the primacy of ease of doing business. So we become essentially non-existentialist facilitators and try to present a catalytic role where the private initiative right sizes and optimizes the way ahead. In the SBFAS, you have the 20,000 crores purely on the extension of shipbuilding, the shipbreaking credit note as a unique selling proposition, and a dedicated shipbuilding mission. The mission means institutional clarity, continuity, and a sustained effort. It is not a flash in the pan. If you're looking at the assistance rate structure, now all vessels, smaller vessels to non-specialized, up to 100 crores is 15% of the actual value. The costings that were shown by Arjunji obviously say that that is not enough, but this is one of the inputs. Non-specialized vessels, which are first 100 crores you get 15, and then above 100 crores you get 20%. Now we are also attempting to nudge for a domestic content creation, so that you basically have more and more indigenous content. So you have 30% of the domestic content, you get nothing. 30 to 40% pro rata support, and 40% plus full support. Now the USP here, which I'll speak about later, is the shipbreaking credit note. Now coming to the shipbuilding development scheme. Both greenfield and brownfield. The basic objective was greenfield, 4 to 5 mega clusters, starting right from zero. Bring in an anchor investor who has proven credentials, put in everything, roll out the red carpet in institutional terms, and ensure that that entire ecosystem is built in a greenfield initiative. Brownfield, help out with the various elements where, as was mentioned, capital intensivity is taken off, so that more focus by the private operators on the operational aspects and the commercial aspects than on capital intensive investment in doing the bigger things which are being funded upfront. Manish Sharma ji spoke about capacity building. There is a dedicated INSTC, which is on the similar lines as the Chinese research institution, what's there in Korea for shipbuilding design, research, and support. Interestingly, you have a credit risk scheme too, which defrays your pre-ship insurance coverages and your post-ship and vendor default insurance. So what was spoken of the IBC, the NCLT, we are attempting to basically plug those slips. Now, brownfield and greenfield, as I mentioned, yard specific. So brownfield essentially allows you channel, basin development, dry dock, slipway, ship lift. And I'm thankful to Mr. Chogle that he acknowledged the manner of interface in the implementation of these schemes. The mandate is very little human interface, very little ambiguity, tied down timelines. Techno-economical feasibility report is done by domain experts who are empaneled international established concerns, who do a revalidation of the costings. The fund and capital infusion is as per a structured program. If it is not happening and there is a compliance requirement or a design corrective requirement, specifics are addressed and reverted back with. Meaning we work in the government not as basically hum sarkar hain, but we work as a part of your team. Similarly for the green field, now the right sizing, we're not looking at doing 10, 15, 20 clusters. We get in the big players, get 4 to 5 right. And because of the federal structure and the provincial structure, we need to have the state government upfront as a lead, partnering them, and an anchor investor who has proven credentials. We take care of the extremely cost-intensive breakwater, are the wave breakers, the internal structures, the common maritime assets, the channel and basin development, dredging requirements, and the other attributes for a capability center if needed. The shipbreaking credit note, ladies and gentlemen, is perhaps a USP. India is already doing 38% of the ship recycling. We have perhaps the largest number of Hong Kong Convention compliant and getting a step further with the EU SRR requirements. Meaning, you recycle a vessel with us, 40% of the scrap value in a cash transaction is available, monetized into a tradable, negotiable instrument, that is the shipbreaking credit note. This then goes in as basically 5% as a limitation of the vessel cost for a new build and is tradable. I don't think this is being offered anywhere else globally. We're working on the basis of it. Perhaps by mid-May, this should be a reality and should gravitate major ship recycling. We all heard that India takes around 27 to 32, 36 months for a vessel. China does it in 6 to 9 months, comparative build. I believe the window of opportunity essentially is the green window. With whatever has happened in the IMO, yes, there was a lot of talk about complete global tonnage recycling. Somehow a 1-year lull, but I don't think it can be wished away. And that is the opportunity we need to capitalize. As I mentioned, the SBFAS, the green vessel category, 25% on the value above 100 crores. And on the first 100, plus 25% on the remainder. The cost of capital, 12 to 14%. Now this is the first time a dedicated, professionally managed maritime investment fund is being institutionalized. And government is just around 49%. So that's where the professionalism is in the management. You're also attempting to basically allow private initiative by providing interest incentivization. So you have a subvention. So if you've got 12 to 14 basis points, which are much higher, you provide an incentive directly out of this pool of funding of around 800 basis points, knocking it off and making you globally comparable and competitive at 400 basis points. Having said this, the government is also walking the talk. I had mentioned sovereign ownership. Captain Tyagi, my eminent colleague here, is perhaps spearheading as the captain of SCI, the single largest vessel infusion upfront capital build in SCI's entire history. They have close to 60 vessels. They're going to build several. And this is just 2 years from where Deepam and a cabinet note said that the SCI had to be disinvested. So the government has turned around the entire approach on shipbuilding. Demand aggregation meant, why foreign flags to import your crude? And all of that is freight paid for by PSUs. And these are cash rich. So there's a JV which Captain Tyagi is spearheading along with the major players in the hydrocarbon sector, ONGC, BPCL, and they themselves are basically rolling out these vessels. So the vessels planned in the tanker segments, as I mentioned, fleet acquisition of 59 vessels. The Honorable Prime Minister in the India Maritime Week, October last year, launched the 5-year business plan of the Shipping Corporation of India. As I mentioned, 10 million GT, 216 bulkers, tankers, offshore vessels. Separately, a dedicated container segment, and this is on the lines of what we're talking about in terms of the Bharat container liner, the coastal shipping freight support scheme, and also the enabling framework, which I'll come to subsequently. What I'm attempting to show here is government is also getting into the build game and investing. So if you're following as a private investor, there are multiple opportunities here itself in the domestically aggregated demand. These are the status, and it's monitored at the ministry at the highest level with the Secretary, Ministry of Port, Shipping and Waterways, as in how many have been tendered, and Captain Tyagi can bear witness as to how aggressive the push is. I'll come to the facilitative framework. The Merchant Shipping Act 1958, we had done a good job with that, but I believe it was getting to be antiquated. Now, if you look at the major flags in the revised 2025 Act, you had 5 acts being passed in a single session of the Parliament. The Coastal Shipping Act has been taken out completely. So much has been talked about cabotage, the Jones Act, the Chinese Act, build for yourself, the right of first refusal. All of that finds reflection in the separate domains. Coasting and coasting trade has been taken out. Intent and proof has been in the recent withdrawal of the General Orders 123 of 2018. There would be pushes and pulls. I'm supposed to attend an online conference immediately where concerns have been raised by foreign flag vessel operators on the coasting trade, because cargo would have to mandatorily be provided for Indian flag vessels. And the apprehension that the DG Shipping, now to be called the DGMA, may not do a very quick licensing. The chartering and leasing licensing portal is live. We've issued more than 660 odd licenses. And the local inquiry for whether there's an Indian flag vessel vis-a-vis a foreign flag being offered just takes around 12 hours. So the whole idea here is enable business. Now these essentially are the impacts out of the Act and the enabling framework. So you're looking at increased tonnage not by building but also by flagging in India. We're also going to the extent of looking at an India International Registry, just as certain European nations have a dual registry. Not diluting it to a flag of convenience, but at least holding it in such a way that the entire culture associated with the UNCLOS Article 92 isn't chucked out of the window, while India's sanctity remains as one voice of sanity, not just in maritime, but also globally. A salvage ecosystem never existed. We're building on that. There was talk about the green tug transition program. We're also looking at higher bollard pull tugs which are ocean going and being provided not just as commercial vessels, deployed, yes, but in the event of so much of traffic increasing, casualty response. These are the hallmarks. I just put them there in the slide. the Director General of Shipping transitions to the Director General Maritime Administration, 360-degree perspective. We also have the pool of human capital growing considerably. So it's maritime all the way, and India pushing for leadership. And you also have, for the first time, a dedicated statutory authority which will address security concerns. There have been concerns of import of narcotics, drugs, illicit traffic, dark vessels. Those will be addressed by this specific Bureau of Port Security. As I mentioned, the Coastal Shipping Act, essentially Indian flag, leveraging coasting trade, precipitating by very soon a coastal freight subsidy or an assistance scheme which will allow you to then, as logistic operators, examine and explore the knocking off of value in your value chain to be export or globally competitive, because you will do the modal shift from road and rail. And just as rail has telescopic rates, similarly the RSR, the rail, sea, road route, providing you seamless connectivity with a digital backbone that was envisaged with the unified logistic interface. As I mentioned, emphasis here again is on Indian flag. And these are vessels which are not 10,000 GT plus. Range could be around 3,000 to 6,000. Bulkers, carriers, cement, then cargo. In terms of steel, all these, even food grains, could be basically shifted over if we have dedicated silos at our ports. This is the integrated infrastructure policy support, and probably I'm preempting this because this is still a work in progress. Perhaps by mid of May, we should have the entire thing notified and on ground. This is just to indicate the kind of global interest that was shown in the Indian Maritime Week, and this was only on the strategic partnerships on building. Now, if you look at the coastal state workshops, as I said, Government of India also is looking at state governments as equal partners. And that is where we're looking at the investments through an SPV and those front-ending along with the anchor investor, greenfield clusters. I'll wind up in simply trying to put forth what kind of administrative reforms we're doing in registry. The registry is being completely revamped. Indian owning a vessel is not restrictive because you broadened the concept of ownership. You're looking at bareboat charter and demise. You're looking at temporary registration for a cash deal if you're bringing a vessel in for recycling. We're also looking at including the ambit to non-propelled vessels under the Indian flag. You talked about right-sizing finance. Unique offers such as all 12 major global financial institutions have a landing here at GIFT. A lot is being examined. You would have heard a lot of major maritime operators flagging here. Doing the funding ecosystem here is something which is basically being nudged at the highest quarters. As I mentioned, one mandate given to the administration is regulatory compliance to be ensured with a smart interface, transparent, accountable, completely electronic, so as to take away any ambiguity or concerns. And there needs to be a confidence and a dependability and an integrity on the framework that is offered. I'll just wind up by saying the human element for DG shipping is foremost. So sometimes you may find us slightly slow to respond to infrastructural aspects, funding. Probably it could be lack of in-house expertise, but then we are outsourcing that because we're getting in international experts to assess most of the techno-economic feasibility reports. The Directorate General of Maritime Administration will place the human element always first, and we're looking at raising it to close to 20 to 25% of the global seafaring pool. And while we're doing all this, we are having very strong guardrails in terms of doing it in a sustainable manner. So this is the green shipping policy. It has a hexagonal beehive structure, which basically gives you the 6 independent components. Essentially, there are 7 pillars. So you have a green port index, smart port shore power. You also have ship recycling as one part. We are also providing a sustainability index for Indian flag vessels, which then gets linked to the operational efficiency, just as the IMO platform, but projectized and then specifically as an index for Indian flag vessels. And of course, the entire transition to green fuels, rendering India as energy secure and surplus. So you transition from being energy insecure to a green surplus bunkering destination. And these are the 7 pillars I spoke about under the National Green Shipping Policy: green ships, ports, fuels, technology, recycling, financing, skill development, and capacity building. Now, as I mentioned, ports are not just to be seen as gateways to industrialization. What you will be witnessing in the Mumbai port, and Rajiv Jalota sir has been chairman there, is a complete rework of the look and feel of the port, the marina, the convention center, a complete revisitation to what a port should be, alongside operationalizing the Harit Saga guidelines. I took time. I will be leaving all these broad frameworks, and we are open for any discussion, deliberation, and collaboration. And we look forward and appeal to you to partner us and take the nation forward in the very high aspirations and targets we have set for ourselves in the Maritime India Vision and Amrit Kaal Vision 2047. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful insight. I would request you to stay back as I invite Mr. Sudhanshu Watts, Senior Vice President, Bombay Chamber, and Managing Director, Pidilite Industries, to present you with a token of appreciation. A huge round of applause for Shri Shyam Jagannathan.